All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Gabe had told me that this was sold out, so it looks like the smallest potential bit of rain has been away. But thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. So I am. So actually, one quick note for the folks there on Zoom: you can hit the side by side mode in the presentation. I think you just go into settings. And you can hit the side-by-side mode, so you'll be able to see both the presentation slides and the owl here as well, if you want to do that. All right, let's see if this is working. All right, sweet. So I found this picture of an AI robot that was bald, so I felt like that was appropriate for me in this presentation. So my name is Ryan Robinson. I'm one of the owners of a company called Mainstay Technologies. We're an IT services firm. We have our main location in Manchester. We also have an office in the Lakes region in Laconia, and then one in Burlington, Mass. as well. So we take care of companies typically between, call it 10 to 300 or so employees within mostly New Hampshire and a little bit of southern Maine and northern Massachusetts as well. And what we do primarily is I manage IT services. We do information security services. So for organizations that have higher levels of compliance requirements because they're under HIPAA or FINRA or CMMC or whatever, we can come in and do both the technical work, but also the organizational security side, building policies and that kind of thing. But we have also, over these last several years, become an AI services agency as well, because now it is not, it was back in the day when I was cutting my teeth in IT, it was sort of like, if your job was standing behind a server rack with a screwdriver, then everything moved to the cloud and it became much more application focused. And then we started doing lots and lots of security. Whereas really over the last several years, this has evolved. And now, if organizations are not thinking about AI and thinking about how they can leverage it, then they're going to fall behind very, very quickly. And so, which I'm assuming is probably why most of you are here in this room, because you sense that and feel that, but may not know exactly what next steps to take. This is not connected. There we go. Whenever an IT guy has a technical issue, it's always like, oh yeah, thought you were a good IT guy. I already introduced myself a little bit, and let's jump in and talk about AI. So AI is not just another technology. And I think that there's a misconception that people often think, oh, we had the PC revolution, and then we had the internet revolution, and now, this is just the next wave, right? This is just the next thing is AI. Well, no, AI is fundamentally different than other technology because other technology always required a human being to dictate and demand and code and explain exactly what the technology needed to do. And then the technology would then follow a set of sort of preordained processes that the human being instilled into it. AI, on the other hand, it learns, it self-corrects. It functions using a neural network that mirrors and mimics a human being's neural network. So instead of it being required by the human being to tell it what to do at every step, it can function essentially in this autonomous fashion. So what it does is it allows you to apply logic to any next steps that you want to take. So you can say, all right, I want to achieve this goal. I'm not going to tell you how to achieve the goal. I just want you to achieve the goal. It will then understand using its neural network and its pre-trained data sets. It will say, oh, okay, in order to achieve that goal of X, I need to do A, B, and C. And as a result, this presentation is really about how to leverage what are called AI agents. AI agents are, most of us have experienced AI in base forms when we use something like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. How many of you on a somewhat regular basis use any of those AI chat tools? Okay, sweet. So all of you in the room. So AI chat is fantastic, but it's not autonomous in the way that AI agents are, right? When you put something into ChatGPT, you're saying, I have a particular query, and it's functioning in a way more like a very advanced Google, right? It's getting a bunch of its pre-trained data sets, it's searching the internet, and then feeding back to you the answers. Now, it's feeding them back in a much more sophisticated manner, but it's fundamentally different than what an AI agent will do, which is essentially going beyond simply answering questions, but actually functioning autonomously after you give it a particular command or a task to accomplish. A couple analogies that I found helpful: aliens and agents. So imagine a scenario in which I think this is an analogy that can help deepen our appreciation for how much AI is not just another technology. It's something fundamentally different that is new in the world. Imagine if tomorrow, let's not say tomorrow, let's say today, you get out of this presentation and you go to your car and you turn on NHPR and you hear them giving the wildest report. And the report is that an alien has landed in Texas. I don't know why I'm choosing Texas, but there's a lot of data centers there. Maybe that's why my brain went there. So the alien lands in Texas, and there's reporters all around. And first of all, you'd be glued, right? You'd be like, oh my goodness, alien life force is here. There's something fundamentally different that's landed on this earth. Then you find out that the alien, the reporters start interviewing the alien, hold almost like an alien press conference, and they start asking the alien all kinds of questions about where it came from and what it knows and all of these things. And they find out that this alien has this almost incomprehensible amount of knowledge. And they found out that it's been studying human beings for the last 50 years and has read every single book. Not only read every single book, but memorized every single book that human beings have published, not only in the last 50 years, but whatever is on sort of data record. And these can be books about behavioral manipulation and how to build atomic weaponry and everything, right? Every possible kind of book. You would start to go, oh no, oh my goodness. Then the interview continues and you find out that the alien says that it has there's other aliens. It's not the only one. And there's a whole planet that is on its way of aliens. And those aliens all are even more sophisticated than this alien. This alien is like a little baby alien. And the other aliens that are coming are way more knowledgeable, way more experienced, and way more capable than anything before. Can you imagine the amount of existential dread and like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here? That is precisely what is happening with AI. That's what AI is. AI is a intelligent life force, right? It doesn't have a soul, and we could get into some metaphysical elements of this, which I find very interesting. Be happy to chat about in the Q&A. But even though it may not have a soul, it essentially functions in this sort of human mimicking kind of way. So that's one helpful analogy. The second is thinking about AI as like an agent. And an agent is this idea that you can utilize AI as like a separate employee. So imagine this interview with this alien continues, and you have all this existential dread, but then you find out this really cool thing, and the alien starts to communicate that all it wants to do is to serve human beings. That it's come down not to actually take over, but its main goal in its life is to, like a dog loves to follow commands and gets all its happiness from doing the things that its master tells it to do. And the alien, you find out, loves to serve other people and to do the things that they don't love to do. Well, that's exactly what an AI agent functions as. It functions as this incredibly intelligent force, trained in way more knowledge than you would have the capability of having. But its main job, its main reason for existence is to do the things that you want to do. So you can think of these AI agents as sort of digital extensions of yourself, but capable of so much more and with such a high amount of leverage. It keeps going on every time, Gabe.
Yeah, it's because I clicked on the chat.
Okay, no problem.
It's people.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I think that there are three waves that are coming of AI. We are in the first wave, I would say now, which is enhancement, where AI is accelerating our human work. So I bet that all of you raised your hands when you said you use ChatGPT or Claude or some of those other services. I bet a lot of the time you're doing that is because you're working on something and you're saying, oh, I need help with this thing that I'm working on. You're using AI, it's this tool in your hands and you're leveraging it to do the work more effectively. Wave two will be the replacement. This is when AI takes over specific tasks and specific jobs for people. This is obviously the thing that everyone's most worried about is, is AI going to replace me? Is AI going to replace my industry? What level of disruption are we in for? And you might think that wave two feels like it's still far off, but I would say it's not. And a good example of this is several months ago, Tobias Lutke, who's the CEO of Shopify, there was this internal memo that ended up getting leaked online that was sent out to their whole company. And so Shopify is obviously a very big company. And in this memo, he basically said, we are not going to just talk about AI. We are going to truly become an AI forward and AI integrated company. And he set a few ground rules that the company would henceforth, moving forward, would abide by. Number one was that there would be no hiring manager allowed to hire a person until that hiring manager proved that AI or some AI tool or AI agent could not provide the job function first. That was the number one. There was a couple others. One was that AI had to be included in every single project plan. And a third one was that AI had to be included in every performance review. So anytime that there was a performance review, the manager would grade the employee on how much they were leveraging AI to do the tasks of their job, which is pretty amazing. Now, as you can imagine, in small business, things tend to flow down, right? Like these bigger companies will establish these sort of expectations and technology integrations and so on. And after some time, it flows down to smaller and smaller businesses. So this is really here. It's already, wave two is really already here when it comes to larger companies. But this is going to continue to move its way down. And small business leaders like the ones in this room are going to start setting the same expectations for their teams. Wave three will be revolution. This will be when we get past this scary part of replacement and we move into now what is possible? What new jobs begin to emerge? What new industries end up emerging? I think of this, an example of this is the Industrial Revolution. Typically, in these big revolutions that are often precipitated by technology revolutions, typically there's this really ugly, messy period when the revolution hits, right? So you think about like the factories in the late 1800s where there was child labor and incredible filth and all of this. Well, it's like there was a bunch of things that had to happen in order to clean that up. There was like the Catholic social worker movement that happened in the late 1800s. There were certain regulations that came about. There were child labor laws. There was all these things that ended up happening. And out of that, a lot of the mess of that revolution was cleaned up. And then a new world kind of emerged from it that was much more humane. Now, my hope is, I'm a pretty optimistic guy, so maybe I'm too optimistic in this, but my hope certainly is that the period of messiness sort of immediately following this revolution is small, and that we then build these new industries, new really interesting jobs that utilize the other parts of human beings that AI cannot replicate. Okay, so there's these three levels of AI. You've got chat, which probably is where most of the folks in this room are in this level. This is where you're using these tools to answer questions, summarize, draft content. It tends to be a lot of like just using the language parts of AI's capabilities. The second level is when you actually build automated, repeated processes using particular AI tools. One of the most popular versions of this is a tool called Zapier. Has anyone ever used Zapier in here? Zapier. So Zapier is an AI-powered automation tool that allows you to take certain workflows in your business and then automate them, but not like the old school process automation tools that weren't intelligent and simply required a sort of if this, then that kind of functionality that a human being would have to set up. These new process automation tools, Make is another very popular one, MAKE. These allow you to essentially say, all right, here AI, here's the process that we have currently. We want to improve on that process. Please create a function that allows us to both improve the process, then to take that process that we've improved, repeat it, and then integrate it into other workflows in the organization and then communicate it out properly. That's the next level. The third level is agents. So this is the outcome level. This is where you essentially have what you could think of as like a digital employee or a digital being that you give particular outcomes that you want to see happen in the world. And you say, go and do those. And then the AI agent, sometimes it, depending on its level of sophistication and its pre-training, sometimes it will require you to sort of hold its hand. And sometimes it will allow you to basically, if it's really specialized, it will just do all of the work for you without you having to manually be training it and giving it individual tasks. I like to think of this as sort of three levels within agents. You have interns. Okay, so imagine if you got an intern for your company. If you got an intern, you would know, all right, this is going to take a bunch of handholding. I'm going to have to train this intern. The intern's not super experienced, so I'm going to have to probably have it mentored by some senior person who's going to give it a lot of information and context. And I'm going to probably have to be much more specific with an intern about what individual things need to get done. However, an intern is not the same as you doing yourself, right? An intern still has a level of autonomy and an ability that's incredible. And any of you who've used interns really well know the power of having a great intern. That's like sort of the first layer of these agents. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute of what I would think of as like an intern agent. Then you have the employee level AI agents. So this is where you can give the agent a task, and it really does it without your manual intervention at all. It's really, you give it the outcome and it just goes. Then you have the third layer, which is the specialist. This is, again, think of this as like your best employee, right? Or someone who is trained on a very particular task and is incredible at it. So maybe you have an engineering company and you have a couple real senior level architects. And you can just give the architect and say, hey, we're doing this particular environmental consulting job. Like, here's the RFP that we have to submit. You go and build the plan. You don't have to give it anything, right? You just say, go and do it. That's these levels of specialists. And I'm going to, in this presentation, give examples of particular tools that all of you can walk away with and use at each of those three levels. By the way, I tried to make this presentation a little bit, I dislike in general PowerPoint presentations. Like, I'm kind of prejudiced against them in general. I'm particularly prejudiced against PowerPoint presentations that are incredibly wordy, where all the person is doing is just like reading what's on the screen. However, in this presentation, I tried to make it a little bit more wordy so that you guys can take this. If not all of it sinks in immediately, I can give this to you and you can really walk these steps and read through the presentation. I think it'll be more helpful than if it's just a bunch of bullet points. Okay, so here's the first example of an AI intern. So if you use, how many of you use ChatGPT in particular? Okay, perfect, great. This is a perfect example of that. All right, so there's something within, you know how when you open ChatGPT, the first thing you see is a little chat box at the bottom right of the screen, right? And probably for a lot of people, all you do is you just go right to that chat box and say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, or hey, help me with this. There's a bunch of really cool functionality within ChatGPT that often people do just completely ignore, and it's really powerful. One example of that, this is not the one I'm about to talk about, but one example of that is using projects. How many of you have used projects in ChatGPT? Oh my goodness, projects will change your freaking life. So basically on the left side of the screen, so if you see here, this is a screenshot, this is sort of a little cloudy here, I apologize. But you can see like there's a new chat, search chats, this is probably where you immediately go. If you keep going down this line here, there'll be a little button that says projects. A project is just like what it sounds like. It's a space within ChatGPT that allows you to upload a bunch of documents, a bunch of data related to a specific project you're working on. And then any query that you give it has all of that in its long-term memory within that particular project. So you could do something like, you could create a financial management project for your organization. You say, all right, every month we're going to get P&Ls, statements, and I want to have really good nuanced analysis of those P&Ls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload into this particular project all our historic P&Ls. I'm going to upload, our COGS and invoices and all kinds of things. I mean, you can put tons of stuff in it. And then when you query it within the project, it will then take all of that sort of pre-training on all of your other data, and it's going to give you way better information, way better analysis. The charts you can pull from it, the reports you can pull from it are now much more comprehensive. Now you might say, wait a second, I thought that ChatGPT remembered my chats, and so it was always training on me. Well, yes and no. Did you know that you actually have to tell ChatGPT to store something in its long-term memory if you want it to do that? It does not do that automatically. It will take certain things that you put in, and it will it will think that it needs to put certain pieces into its long-term memory. But if there are things that you want to go into that, you can't just assume it's going to put it into its long-term memory. Whereas when you create a project, all of that will remain even without you telling it to put it in its long-term memory. So projects are, honestly, that's hopefully worth the price of admission right there. If you just start using projects, that will be worth this whole presentation. And it's not even on the presentation. So what I really want to talk about is another tool within in ChatGPT, which are called GPTs. So if you go further down that line, you'll see this little button here that says GPTs. You click that button, and then what it does is it's going to give you these two little boxes at the top, create and configure. You start with create, and then you get to configure. And I'm going to walk you through both. So basically, in this step, you are defining what this GPT is going to be its role and output. So again, think of the GPTs as interns, not employees. I'm going to talk about AI employees later, but this is one where essentially you can use ChatGPT, and a GPT is like a little bot. Think of it like you're taking this large bot farm, which is ChatGPT as a whole, and you're going to say, I'm going to take one little guy. You can name it Jeff or Joe or whatever. And you say, I'm going to train my Jeff GPT. I'm going to train him on a particular kind of task that I want it to do. So I built one out here to use as an example for you. So it will essentially ask you what you want, and you can create a prompt. And so in this prompt that I made up, it was build a landscaping competitor researcher for small businesses in New Hampshire. The role is to do market research, to be a market research analyst. And the goal is to give one or more URLs, analyze each competitor, and return a concise table with bullets. Must do, use web browsing for all findings. I don't want to go into each of these details, but essentially in the chart, give companies, services, target segments, pricing signals, positioning / claims with like what the hero image is and what the main proof is. What is the company's call to actions that they use primarily? If you had an intern, wouldn't this be an incredible thing for your intern to do? Right? Like this would be one of those things where you're like, and probably an intern wouldn't do it that well. Whereas Jeff GPT will absolutely crush this task. Now, you might say, well, Ryan, you're in AI services, so you know how to build these really like comprehensive, sophisticated prompts. I don't. So is Jeff GPT going to be really helpful to me? Yes, because you know what? I was not that smart. This was not because I'm so sophisticated. All I did is I asked ChatGPT to create for me an example command prompt for a market research analyst. So you basically get Jeff GPT to tell Jeff GPT what it should do and how it should do it, and it will do it in a really sophisticated manner. Isn't that cool? Mm-hmm. So that's step one. You define the role and the output. Then step two is you go into the configure tab right here next to it, and then you basically give it, as I said here, you'll configure the GPT agent's capabilities, prompt starters, and other settings to lock in its unique personality and behavior. So this allows you to take Jeff GPT and basically say, I want this intern to function this way. I want it to communicate in this way to me. I want it to follow these steps whenever I give it a particular task. So you can see here, like, all right, the name, landscaping competitor researcher. Description, analyzes Southern New Hampshire landscaping competitors with crisp source-linked findings. Instructions, you are a market research analyst specialized in landscaping companies serving New Hampshire with a default geographic focus on Southern New Hampshire, for example, Nashua, Manchester, Derrysdale, and Londonderry. I won't read the whole thing to you, although when you see the slides, you can look at this and see the specific details. But what's amazing about this is you are able to tell it, again, like, here's how I want you to deliver it. You've probably all heard the term prompt engineering. You've heard this term? Sometimes when you go into something like ChatGPT and you ask a question and it gives you such a great answer, I think it's easy to kind of think, I don't really need to know prompt engineering. I don't really need to know at that level because it's giving me such great stuff. Why would I care? No, prompt engineering actually matters a ton. And part of the reason is because think of going back to the alien analogy. If this alien has read every book that's been published, if you say to it, go look in a particular area of your memory, what's going to happen is it's going to go more directly to that area. It's going to find the relevant data much more effectively than if you just say, go out into all, I mean, think of maybe like a better example is like a warehouse. You know, if you've got a worker and you say, I want you to go find X and Y products, and let's say that the warehouse is 300,000 square feet or something insane. Well, they're going to take a while to get that to you. And when they get that to you, they might not, it's not a perfect analogy because a product might be a one-to-one thing that you need. But oftentimes, especially in an information example, it's not going to be exactly as beneficial as if you tell it exactly where to go. So you can see that what you're doing with Jeff GPT here is you're telling it exactly what kind of role it should play. And you're telling it exactly where to go to get the kind of information it's going to need. So it doesn't sort of waste time and not give you the kind of answers that are going to be most beneficial. So this is a really, incredible tool. So here's what happens. Okay, so you create the general overview of what you want. You configure the particular settings and give it a particular personality. Then over on this side of the screen, you'll see a regular chat. The same way you would in normal ChatGPT, but it's functioning as this Jeff GPT in this case, right? And so here's a prompt that I gave it. Find landscaping companies with over $3 million in revenue serving these areas. You include sources and show the math for the estimates. Use columns like these, and I asked for it to give a discovery table and a deep analysis table. So this is more like, do some competitor research and just give me some basic information. This is frankly probably what an actual intern would give you. There's nothing more than this. But because ChatGPT is so much more sophisticated, it's able to do a deep analysis table and then look at things like target segments and pricing signals and the notes about the user experience functionality of the competitor's website. Like so much more advanced kind of things. Then here's what it delivers. Check this friggin' thing out. Like it gives a chart that has all of these landscaping companies. Now I didn't include all of it. This chart goes like to here and has all of those pieces in the deep analysis mode and has all of them going out with links so you can click immediately to whatever it is you want to find. This is the kind of work product that if you gave it to the intern, you'd be like, you're going to be the CEO of this company in like 4 years because you'd be so impressed and so psyched about what they were able to deliver to you. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. So let's talk about the next level. So if you got intern, then you go to employee. So this is where you start using tools like Zapier and Make and some of these other more sophisticated AI tools. So just to give you a quick example, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this because I think let's start with the intern. Let's build to employee and specialist. But at least I want to give you a little bit of a framework. So you could take let's say we take that research analyst, our Jeff GPT there, and we plug that in to Zapier. What Zapier will allow us to do is it allow us to essentially automatically trigger those same kinds of prompts every particular, let's say you put it in so that you tell the intern to do that same process every 6 months or whatever it is. And maybe you have certain tasks. Maybe there's a task that you have related to payroll that you need to do every week or every 2 weeks. Well, you can put that into Zapier and just have it automatically do that every 2 weeks on a very particular schedule and continue the same path. You can also, Zapier is so advanced, you can also say, when you see things that are odd, don't just run it. Let me know what those odd things are. Send me some alerts so that I can make manual adjustments, or you can even give it permissions to make the manual adjustments itself. So then you can have Zapier then save the results to a very particular file, right? Like you can say anytime that you run this particular query and grab this data set or grab this report or do this analysis, I want you to put it into landscaping competitors.xls on this particular file on my computer. And then and email it to me as soon as you're done. So then every Tuesday morning, that just shows up in your inbox with that Excel file attached. And then you can go and you can trace back and see what the report says and make any changes that you want to or whatever. So in this case, you can see AI moves from being like a reactive thing where I go into the system, I ask a particular query. Instead, you make it proactive. You give it, here's what you need to do, and it figures out. Even the stuff that I just said about like, you might feel intimidated by that. Go, man, I don't know Zapier very well. So how am I going to go in and use that tool and then be able to know what to tell it to do? That's the magic of this, is that all you have to do is just give it the outcome that you want, and it will design for you the workflow and implement that for you. And if you're struggling, you're always a quick, ChatGPT search away from additional support. Okay, this is a really cool one. This is another one that I think might be worth the price of admission just for this one. So the next level, so you go from interns that are, just basic, have basic knowledge, but are, certainly pretty advanced, more than a normal human intern. You go to employees where they're more advanced, more sophisticated, have more data sets and autonomous and doing things on a regularly scheduled basis or whatever. Then you get to these specialists AI agents, which they only do like one thing, but they do it incredibly well and they do it proactively without any prompts on your part. So here's an example of this. There's a service called Fixer. Did I write it in here? Fixer, F-Y-X-E-R. What Fixer does is it basically will write emails for you before you even see the initial email that comes in. It will write replies for you before and drop them in your draft drop them in the draft before you have even read the email in the first place. So here's an example. Imagine this saying blah, blah, blah. Hey, like you do this for me or whatever. You go into Gmail and this is what you will find. You will find this draft that already says, hey, Sean, thanks for reaching out about the kind words about Acme Co. Number one, our tool uses advanced AI algorithms to advance. Here's the bullet points. I'd be happy to chat more about this. Let me know what time that works best, Charles. None of this Charles has to write. This all just shows up automatically. What was the other thing I was going to say about this? Oh yeah, what's amazing about this as well is that Fixer, by the time it gets to this phase, once you implement this tool, it reads all of your historical emails. So it knows your voice. If you've used other AI services, a lot of times you have to tell it what your voice is. You have to kind of train it on your voice by uploading a bunch of documents or saying, hey, I'd like to talk this way or whatever. Fixer, you don't need to do any of that, because once it's connected to your inbox, it then reads those emails, really gets a sense of your voice, how you typically respond to things. Are you verbose? Are you very short and quick to the point? And I use Fixer. I love Fixer. And I often find, I'm so shocked often at how I find that when I get to the draft, it was like exactly what I would have said. Now, if some of you have a hesitation in your mind, like I did when I first heard about this tool, one of the hesitations in your mind might be like, man, this feels so inauthentic. Like, oh, this is like, I'm just using a machine. I'm not speaking out of my own, like, true authentic self. I think that can be true. And I do think that's a worthwhile caution for all of us to have. However, I also would say that you'd be surprised in your average day-to-day working life how little you're actually expressing your authentic self in a lot of these emails anyway. A lot of them are very procedural. It's like, yes, agreed, we should do that. Can you let so-and-so know? It's not like you're writing your Charles Dickens tome. And so what's beautiful about this tool is that it does the procedural work for you, and you can still edit it. So if I say, oh, I want to add some Charles Dickens to this, or I want to add some more of my authentic self, I can always delete, edit, add whatever I want. But this gives me an immediate starting point. And for those of us who live in our email inboxes, the amount of time this saves is wild. Yes, sir.
Does the AI kind of look at your past sent emails, so it's almost in your voice? Like, do you find it does a good job of replying like you do?
Incredibly.
Yeah.
Like, shockingly. Sometimes I'm like, am I even a real person? Am I so predictable that this AI is able to figure out exactly what I would say? It's like, oh yeah, I guess I am that predictable. So,
Is Fixer a subscription service, and is there a barrier with my organization, cybersecurity, that will prevent Fixer from getting into my email?
Yes.
Looking at my historical.
yeah, so to answer both your questions, one, yes, it's a subscription service. I think the subscription I have costs like $60 a month. So, depending on your sense of things, like that can be pretty expensive. But when I think about how much time that saves me, and then I think about sort of like what my adjusted hourly rate is based on other factors, it's like, oh my goodness, that's like the cheapest money I spent. So I think it's well worth it. But obviously you have to gauge that and how much are you in email. There's some jobs where you're just not emailing a lot. And so it might not be that valuable. To the cybersecurity question, that is a whole other, normally when I talk about AI, actually almost like the main thing I'm talking about is security, because I think that we are in a position right now where everyone's really interested in AI because it's the new, cool, sexy thing to talk about and think about and all that. But I think that security is actually more important now than it was pre-AI. When we would get asked to speak at events and conferences and so on, like 4 or 5 years ago, almost the only thing anyone wanted to ask us about was security. Then once in November of 2022, when ChatGPT 3 came out, which was sort of, or 2, excuse me, which was the first like real prime time version of ChatGPT, it was like from that day on, no one asked us about, no one, at least in terms of like public presentations and that kind of thing, no one asked us to talk about security anymore. But I would argue that security is way more important to talk about now than it was prior to these AI tools, because the AI tools can now think of these in the hands of the hackers, right? It used to be, there's a couple kinds of phishing. All of you are probably familiar with email phishing, and probably all of you have received numerous email phishing scams over the years that people have attempted, or bots have attempted. Well, there's a couple main ways to do phishing. One way is called net phishing, which is basically where you think of it like the analogy, like actual fishing for fish, where you take a big net and you throw it at a particular sort of like area of the ocean or the lake, and you just hope that it gets a certain percentage of whatever in that space, right? Now that's effective if you are really good at knowing exactly where the fish are and your net is really strong, and there's a bunch of factors that have to be the case there. But the most effective kind of fishing is something called spear fishing, which is where you're like, I am going for this particular blue whale, and I am going to hunt this thing down. I'm going to know exactly where it lives, what it does every day, and I'm going to spear it. I'm going to go directly for it. Well, pre-AI, spear fishing was very expensive for hackers and hacker organizations to do, because it was much more, or maybe another way of saying it was much more economical to do net phishing, because you just throw out a phishing scam to 300,000 email addresses, and it's a numbers game. You just hope enough people sort of click on it, and then that's worth it. But the problem with net phishing is that it tends to not produce as much money. You might be able to get some people into to buy gift cards and send you the links. There's damage that can be done for sure. But imagine spear phishing the executive director of a nonprofit, or the business owner for a construction company or whatever. If you can hit those real valuable targets, now you can really open things up. You can open up bank accounts. You can do all kinds of things. Well, AI allows you to spearfish at scale, right? Because now you have the AI tools that you can just send it towards the particular fish. It does all of this work that I'm talking about on your behalf while you as the hacker are sleeping and not paying attention. So we need to be thinking about security way more. Unfortunately, this in our presentation today, I can't get into all the nuances, but if you sign up for our mailing list, like we're doing these kinds of presentations, and a lot of them are related to security as well. But yes, I mean, the very simple answer to your question is yes, you need to be absolutely concerned about what you give these tools access to. You need to make sure that whoever you're working with on IT and information security is building a good information security program and is making sure that you've got good vendor management, make sure that these tools are being vetted properly, and so that only the vetted tools are being allowed. And then even once they're allowed, they should only be utilized according to what's called principle of least privilege, which means they should only be able to access the minimum amount of data they need in order to do the task that they need to do. Okay. Great question. I feel like there was maybe another one that I missed. Good.
I just had a comment.
Yeah, sure.
I have a friend who's a philosophy professor, and colleges are losing, money and all that good stuff. But he said that it was really easy to recognize which students used AI to write their papers. So I was curious, like when your emails are being written by this fixer, who's really looking, to see is that guy doing his job? Because this professor was like, it's so obvious that this kid used AI.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's why I never send a fixer email without reading it first, and without making sure that it is something that I would say, it is the decision that I would make. It's phrased in a way that I would phrase it. I'm blown away by how the overwhelming majority of the time it is, but 100%. Yeah, I would not just say willy-nilly see that and click send, because you're right, that could come across weird. Yeah. And I also think that there's almost like an ethical thing there too. It's tough to know exactly where that line crosses, but if I'm receiving an email from someone, I want to know that they meant it, said it. Even if they're using a tool that helps them advance and do that quicker, that's fine. But I want to know it's from them, And
you're saying that it learns off of you just by your patterns of responses. Is that kind of like when Dragon Speaks came out way back when you had to sit there in a room with no noise and tell it your voice? Because they use that in the field of disabilities all the time.
Yeah.
As far as adaptive tools and equipment technology. So I was curious.
Yes, this is basically what Dragon
it's a big Dragon.
It's what Dragon software and Speaks Naturally and whatever their products are is what they were hoping to eventually be. Funny enough, we actually just vetted a Dragon module recently that was an AI driven, and it wasn't very good. Which is surprising because you'd think that's their main stock and trade. Here's another cool one that's not part of the presentation, but is one of the most valuable AI tools I use. There's something called WhisperFlow, WHISPR, there's no E there, FLOW, WhisperFlow. How many of you, when you text, use voice to text versus just typing in with your thumbs? Most of you just type it in with your thumbs, you use voice? So I'm a big voice to texter. I almost exclusively use voice to text because I find that it's way faster than actually typing it in. Whisper, but what has always annoyed me about voice to text is you say so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. And it half of the words it gets kind of wrong, or it doesn't include a comma when it should, or it capitalizes something that it shouldn't capitalize and doesn't capitalize something that it should. It's and then you have to basically go back over it and edit it. What WhisperFlow does is it's an AI tool. So it listens to the voice. Then it runs it through an AI algorithm to make sense of what it says. And then it automatically adds all the correct
two and two.
Yeah, exactly. It will contextually figure out that you meant the number 2 and not the word TO. Exactly, or TOO. It will contextually figure all that out. It will even listen to your voice so that if you raise up, when you ask a question, it will put a question mark. It's figuring that all out. WhisperFlow is free too. So that's a no-brainer, amazing tool. Okay. All right, so to go back here, so you can see we got intern versus employee versus specialist. So an intern is this sort of on-demand help. It's you still have to be pretty actively involved in it. Whereas an employee, you can set it in motion for a particular task or a particular outcome, and then it will do that outcome in a recurring manner without your manual intervention. And a specialist, like something like Fixer, it functions as a particular kind of expert, is sent in a particular kind of direction. So it's very advanced. You don't have to keep retraining it over and over again. It will just do the work that you want it to do. So just as a couple more examples of how you can use these. So let's say you want to do you're in customer service. So what you could do is you could take a customer service ChatGPT, Bob GPT, whatever, and you create a Bob GPT powered FAQ, frequently asked questions assistant. You train it, so you go through the same process that I had just outlined before with the research analyst, but you train it. So you upload a bunch of documents that, service descriptions and policies and all these things, right? And then when a customer answers a question like, hey, what's your return policy? Or how do I schedule an appointment? Whatever. Then you just simply cut and paste it into that chatbot. It will give you a full answer in a kind of human way. And this is how you can train it. Say, like, when you respond back to these answers, do it in a very client friendly, client-centric kind of voice and tone. So then you can just cut and paste, send that back to the client that's asking you the question. But then you can get more advanced with it, and you can use something like Zendesk, integrate that into the GPT or Zapier, and then we'll automatically draft first response email. So if you get an email that comes in through your ticketing system or an email that just comes to your inbox and it's got the FAQ, what it does is it uses the GPT assistant, that FAQ powered with all of the training, writes that response properly, and then automatically drafts the first response emails for those tickets, escalates complex ones, logs issues into your CRM, the whole nine. Pretty wild, huh?
That is wild.
Absolutely wild. Another example, if you're in marketing, you can use your AI intern, your marketing GPT, and you create a content calendar generator. So you say, I want you to function as my content calendar creator. That's the GPT's role. You can have it create, create 12 blog post ideas, 12 LinkedIn posts, and CTA suggestions based on the next month's focus, including competitor comparisons and SEO keywords that you can just drop into the your CMS platform that you use for the website. This is obviously if you're in marketing in particular. Now you might say, well, wait, can't ChatGPT do that? Can't I just give that prompt into a regular ChatGPT text box? Yes, you can, but remember, the whole point of these GPTs is that they're pre-trained. Does anyone know what GPT stands for?
I was gonna ask.
Stands for generative, let's see if I can remember it. Generative pre-trained transformer. And so those three ideas, it's generative, like it creates it for you. It's pre-trained, so it's pre-trained on a bunch of data sets. And it's a transformer. With that transformer refers to the actual technical architecture that it's built on. That's why it's ChatGPT 3, ChatGPT 4. Those are the transformer archetypes essentially that they're built on. But the reason I bring up the name is because that pre-trained word. So when you go into a regular chat, it's pre-trained on all these things on the internet, right? It's pre-trained on whatever OpenAI has just pushed into the regular GPT model, whether it's 4.0 or 5 or whatever. Whereas a GPT that I'm talking about that's customized to you is pre-trained as well, but it's pre-trained on all of your stuff, all of your particular stuff. And so that's why it can create this way more effectively if you give it this prompt, a GPT this prompt, versus giving just a regular chat that prompt. This is going to produce way better results for you that are more customized to your particular organization. Then again, you can use Zapier, and you can use it to pull from your blog library, auto-generate LinkedIn captions, schedule posts. So you can have it automatically schedule the posts in Buffer or Hootsuite or whatever your social media management platform is. So that way, you don't have to then just do this, cut and paste it, move it into the system. You can set up a workflow that does all of that for you. Okay, so what's possible right now? Hopefully those examples are helpful. Right now, where we are in late 2025 is you can build an AI intern in minutes. Like that process that I gave you as the screenshots of, that does not take long. You can do this in literally minutes. One of the things that's cool is in the past, coding was always done in particular coding languages, right? Basic or Python or whatever. Now, we're still doing coding using AI. The difference is, guess what language we use to code now? English. That's right. So that's why we can build an intern in just mere minutes, because we don't need to know the coding languages that in the past people had to know. You can generate reports and other outcomes using these AI interns and employees. You can automate them, and there's no dev team needed because of that English functionality. Here's what's coming. What's coming next? The next sort of 2.0 version of this is multi-agent workflows. This is where instead of having an employee that just functions on its own, you have multiple AI interns and multiple AI agents, and they are then working in tandem with one another. So through APIs, through like the connectors that we all use and other integrations in our businesses, those APIs will be related to these AI tools. So it'll basically be like, the analogy is like a room of employees, of digital employees that are doing these things and are working together to accomplish these outcomes instead of even having to come to you. For those of us who have had the experience of, starting a really small business and then building it over time, that freedom when you go from everything is reliant on you to then having a team is like one of the greatest experiences in life.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this next phase is going to be. It's not I use a GPT or I use a particular chatbot. It's I have a team of employees that I've pre-trained on our company, my individual finances. Like you can use all this stuff for personal finances as well. And then those agents work together. They collaborate then across departments. Deep application integration. So most line of business applications are all scrambling to build AI functionality into them. And so the more that happens, the more these individual AI agents like Zapier or whatever will then be able to go into the data sets that are already there instead of you having to pull them and then train the AI agent or the AI employee or whatever on that data set. You'll be able to just basically plug it into your CRM or your ERP, and it will be able to pull that for you.
About 9 minutes left.
Excellent. So early adopters are experiencing this agent-ready advantage already. And the reason that I have this slide in particular is because you don't get to this unless you've done this, right? Like that's not the way life works. So my challenge to all of you is like, if you want to be able to get to this next really incredible level represented here, well, you have to start now building these things into your organizations and you have to actually use them. There was a Ezra Klein podcast a few months ago where he said, it's not going to be AI that replaces people. It's going to be people who know how to utilize AI that replace people, right? And so be that latter person. So getting started in 4 quick steps. 1, what I would tell you to do out of this conversation today, pick 1 high friction repetitive task. Pick something that is just annoying to you to have to do, that you have to do somewhat consistently. Then build a GPT with clear formatting rules. Again, you do not need to build all the prompts yourself. Just go into ChatGPT itself and say, I'm looking to achieve this. What are the prompts I need to put into my GPT in order to accomplish this goal? And it will train you how to do it. 3, you want to go to the next level. Automate it weekly with Zapier or Reclaim. Reclaim is one that does like automated scheduling. So if you have a particular task, it's connected to your calendar. And so it will automatically put it into the right places in your calendar. So either one of those tools or Make, again, is another great one for this. So automate it. And then lastly, add a specialist agent. So use Fixer or use one of these kind of very specialist tools. That's a great opportunity. Again, Reclaim is a great one for scheduling. So I would say those are your first 2 things that you should look at is Fixer and Reclaim and see if either of those would be helpful to you. Okay. If all of this sounds awesome, but you kind of have this recognition in the back of your head, well, like, all right, I know I can do a lot of this stuff, but there is still a lot of complexity here. And I have a whole team who are not sitting here in this conversation and may not be bought into this. This is a huge problem right now, is I would say that you have this very small segment of the population represented in the room and represented on Zoom who kind of get all this and are wanting to be more advanced and wanting to do this. But we all have teams that are straggling behind and maybe don't care, think AI is going to kill us, and so we should stay away from it, or whatever the fear is that they have around it. Not that I don't have that fear at all either. So no judgment towards anyone that does. But one of the challenges is getting our teams integrated in with this and giving them the vision and so on. So what we did at Mainstay is we built this AI Quick Start program. And I'll tell you, this is probably, I can't think of anything that we've done, honestly, ever that's been more popular than this, like had more of a ridiculous response, outsized response, because I think that so many people, so many business leaders are feeling like this AI stuff is happening. I feel like it's leaving me behind. I don't know exactly what the right steps are, or I kind of know what the right steps are, but I don't think my team does, and I'm having trouble getting them on board. So we created this AI Quick Start program. We actually have two forms of it. We have a 90-day version and a 30-day version. The 90-day version costs about $20,000. The 90-day version, or the 30-day version costs $5,000. And it's basically like deeper. The 90 days, a deeper level version of it. But basically, what this Quick Start program does is sort of like a do it for you instead of do it yourself structure. So we would come in, our team would come in. First, we would do an AI assessment in your organization, understand sort of like what the potential opportunities are, how you're using it now, how your team's using it, ways that you don't even know they're using it. There's this whole world of what's called shadow AI, which is where you have individual employees putting like company data and all the sensitive information into their own instances of these tools, unbeknownst to you, unbeknownst to IT, and that's a real problem. So we do an assessment there. Then we give you basically like a roadmap, like, okay, based on what our findings are, here's the options that you have in front of you. And we'll give you what's called a plan of action and milestones. So you know, okay, here's exactly the steps for our organization to follow in order to implement AI effectively. We give you that playbook. Then we also, and this is probably the biggest part of it, is we help you launch your first AI use case. So let's say, for instance, that you individually use ChatGPT. Well, there's an enterprise, like a company version of ChatGPT, where you can have it actually be properly secured, properly trained, and all that. So that way your team can use that enterprise version of it instead of using their own personal version of it, which, again, you have no idea what's going to happen with that data. And so we help stand up an initial platform. It doesn't have to be ChatGPT. It's going to depend on what the assessment shows is going to be best for you as a first use case for your organization. We stand it up for you, and then we train your team on it. So that way it's not you having to sort of pull along the group, but we're coming in, and I think there's a level of authority that we bring into it that people go, oh, okay, all right, we're actually doing this. And so here we go, let's get started. And so you don't need to be Tobias Luque and send out a memo and say, all right, everyone, we're going to do these things. Instead, you bring us in, we help set that tone and tenor with this process. It takes 30 days to do, so it's not a significantly long process, but it is incredibly valuable 30 days, as you can imagine. Right now, we have a 14-day sign-up bonus. So if anyone here signs up in the next 14 days, we'll also give you an AI policy as well that we can eventually, if you want to, we can help customize for your particular organization, or you can customize it yourself. We will do a line of business application audit as well. Sorry, I had a little formatting issue there. And so we'll review your other core line of business applications to help you understand like what your opportunities are there for integrations and ways that we can leverage that. We only have 4 spots. Like I said, this has been very popular. So we only have 4 spots left in the program for the next round of the Quick Start program. So let me know right away if you're interested in being in this. Otherwise, we'll have to push it out. And those bonuses are only available for the next 14 days if you sign up during that period of time. So by the time it's all said and done, you'll get the scorecard, playbook, you'll get the live pilot where we roll out that initial use case, we'll train your team, and then give you these bonus policies. So if you're interested in that, if you're not, that's totally fine. But if you are, my email address is here, so you can just email me and just put in the subject AI. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to write any long email. Just put in the subject AI, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn, and I'll know if you connected with me today, and based on the cross-check with the attendee list, I'll know who it was that was here. And I'll send you both this presentation, all these slides, and I'll send you the information on the Quick Start program. All right.
Good time. Packed a lot in an hour.
All right, yeah, I hope that was really valuable. Are there,
valuable.
good, I'm so glad. Are there any other, oh, I have to say, before we go, by the way, that Kate here, I have to use this because, so I was talking to Kate. Kate was the head of school at Tilton School, which is one of our clients. And we love working with Kate. And that's not, I'm not just saying that because she's here. Love working with Kate. And what did you say, Kate? Please tell the group.
Oh,
What did
I
you share with
said,
me?
when we made the decision to start working with Mainstay, it was by far one of the best decisions we've ever made. Seemed like we were safer, more efficient, and it was seamless.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, God bless you. Thank you. So are there any other questions? I'm happy to stay around for a few more minutes to answer any questions. You guys did a great job asking questions while we were chatting too, so that's great. Any others?
I was gonna ask you what GPT was in the beginning, but I didn't want to sound stupid. I was like, thank God, no one knew what it was. That was funny.
There's genuinely no stupid questions, especially when it comes to such a new emerging field like this. Yes.
I am Sarah Timberlake. I'm with M&T Bank.
Nice to meet you, Sarah.
Nice to meet you too. So with me being a banker and listening to all of this, when you talk about the profit and loss, talk about going through reviewing cost of goods sold, different reports like that.
Yeah.
How accurate is that sort of realm right now?
Yeah, really good question. Well, let me say a couple things in context to your question too. So where I thought you were going to go with that question, I want to almost answer because probably everyone's thinking of it, which is, okay, if I put my company financial data in there, how safe and secure is that
Absolutely will not.
as well? So I would say a couple things to
Quick
that.
answer.
I would say a couple things to that. One, this is why companies need to have an enterprise account for these tools. Because if you have an enterprise account, what it allows your IT or information security company to do, assuming that they've got sophistication in this area, it allows them to actually set really proper control. So actually having your stuff in a corporate ChatGPT account could be safer than you having that stuff on your own computer or your own server. So it's not that it's unsafe to put it in there. It's just it needs to be in an enterprise account, not in an individual account. Second thing I'll say is that the way that functions, the way that these tools, Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI and Google's Gemini, all of these function where the data you put in is encrypted at rest and in transit. So there's a lot of fear, assuming like, oh, if I uploaded this is going to just be all over the internet. No. Even Google's own engineers could not get into your data. Even OpenAI's own engineers cannot get into your data because of the encryption methods that are utilized. So if you are using these properly, you're using corporate accounts like the ones we would set up for you. If you have the right security protocols, they're actually quite safe to put in. Now, your particular question is how accurate is it once you put it in? And I'm sure you guys have probably all heard of this idea of AI hallucinations, which is where the AI tool will just make up something. So hallucinations can still happen. That's not been solved fully. However, with, for instance, ChatGPT 5 and with some of the latest versions of Gemini as well, hallucinations have gone down dramatically. So it's much more rare that it happens. But yes, this is ultimately why there still has to be what's called human in the loop. There still has to be a human in the loop on these things, checking and verifying. I never just send a fixer email, right? I never just get a report and go, oh, of course, this is 100% accurate. You still need to do your checks, but it tends to be way more accurate than if you were to give a human being that same exact task. The human beings make mistakes all the time, right? And so sometimes I see them compared and it's like, well, they're making so many mistakes. Well, it's like, how many mistakes you make with your spreadsheets? So it's not like, oh, we were in magical perfect land before, and now with AI, now it's screwing everything up. It's like actually AI tends to be much more accurate, but we still have to verify. Yes, Kate.
I had a question about when we think about, we're always trying to grow our organizations to be stronger and more efficient. When you think of jobs that are going away or areas that we can build in efficiencies with the use of AI, what are those kind of primary areas that, a member on your team could say, hey, we need another half-time position in X, but actually if we utilized some of the functionality of AI better, like we could save that half.
Yes. And that's, by the way, what I think that's the much more humane way to use these tools too, is to say, how do we use these in such a way where we just don't have to hire the next FTE that we thought we were going to have to, rather than just replacing people? Because the reality is these tools still largely have to be, especially the phase that we're in now, they still have to be utilized by human beings for the most part. And so rather than going, okay, let's use the landscaping example. To your specific question, it's like, okay, let's say you have a landscaping company. Well, AI might not be able to help the guys out in the field building the trenches, right? But your landscape designer, let's say you have one landscape designer and you have a $5 million landscaping company, and you want to get to 10 million, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to hire a second one. Well, if you have the landscape designer start utilizing AI landscape design tools. In fact, the reason I'm using that example is because I happen to know a particular landscape company who has a landscape designer. The landscape designer started utilizing one of these tools and was so mad. He went to the owner of the company and he was like, this is so embarrassing because I spent 4 years of school studying how to do this. And I just put this prompt into this tool and it built like as good of a design as I could have. And by the way, props to that landscape designer who told the owner of the company that, because a lot of people would try to hide that and not have the owner know. But he was like, oh, so that's an example to your specific, like the more direct way of answering it. I would say anything that is like data connected in your organization, if data is involved, AI can do it really, really well. Hey, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So, that's what we do in that assessment, by the way, is we're looking at like, okay, what are the roles in the company? Which roles are most specifically like data driven? And then how do we utilize those tools for those particular roles? Does that answer your question?
You all know Harari wrote Sapiens, but he wrote this book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. I work with people with disabilities, with vocational rehabilitation. I work for myself, but I find people jobs. And this wave of horror went through the entire community because in that book, there was this whole chapter on the useless class. And that's what he named. I'm wondering your viewpoint because I went to a seminar the other day that was saying just that the data entry jobs are gone, AI is taking over. And a lot of people don't believe me when I say I go to these things and this is what's happening. What can you foresee with AI for people that can't use it or understand it as a use for society, that there's going to be people that won't have jobs, won't have places to live, won't have money? Is there anything?
Great question. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'll answer this last question, then if anyone wants any questions, we can chat afterwards. So this will be the last piece here. I'd say that going back to my Industrial Revolution example, my hope is that what will happen is that new parts. So when the Industrial Revolution happened, there were parts of human beings that became devalued, particularly physical strength, right? Yeah. Physical strength was extremely valued prior to mechanization. When mechanization came in, all of a sudden that part of a human being's ability became devalued. But that didn't mean that humans became unvalued. It meant that certain parts of them became more valued. So the human capacity, the human intelligence became more valued. Human creativity became more valued, right? So there was like parts of us, and in any society that's the case. So in an agrarian society, we could think of that as like, oh, that's much more pure and wonderful. But actually in agrarian societies, creativity is often devalued, right? Because it's much more about this sort of like process that provides economic value. So what I think is going to happen is as AI becomes more and more central to our economy, different parts of what human beings are will become more valued. And not to make this weird, but I'm a religious person. I'm a Catholic. And so I believe in like the reality of the soul, and I believe in like true metaphysical reality. My hope actually is that as AI devalues human knowledge, and that as human brains become less valued, I'm hoping that actually the human soul becomes more valued, and the things that are even more deeply human, that are more even central to us than our brains, that those things become actually more valued in the society. Now, I don't know, I'm not
No,
Nostradamus, I don't know if
That's a
that's,
great
I don't know if that will
answer.
happen.
Chills, that was good.
That's actually a
That's
really good answer
It's
because,
a great way to end the.
Yeah.
Like, yay,
Yeah.
something.
because I
Live
think,
for.
if I think of when the internet, I started using the internet in 1998 and people wondered what the hell I was doing because it didn't explode until
Right.
2000 or,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
2000.
yeah,
And the internet's gonna change everything and the internet's gonna do this. And I hear the same things now that I heard back then. It's gonna take over our lives. And it's gonna run us and it smoothed out. And the technology became more mature. And as the technology became more mature, which I think will happen over time,
Mhm.
there will be different pieces and parts of that mature technology that will become, I hope, something that people who are intellectually challenged will be able to use, because by then the
Yeah.
technology will be
They can do
mature,
very well.
Mhm.
and we will have figured out some of those pieces and parts that will enable it to be used
Yes,
by people who are intellectually proud. I hope,
I sure hope so,
I hope.
from your mouth.
but I like your answer way better than my answer.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming. And please don't forget to email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to stay in touch. Awesome.
Good, okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, all right.
That was.